Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 604, and today's date is February 28th, 2015, and the title of this episode is The Current Economic Collapse News Brief. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, out in Greece, we understand they made a deal for 4 months. They're going to get emergency loans to help them out. And we understand that people are very unhappy out in Greece. They're rioting, they're protesting, and they're looking at the situation and they're saying, listen, we voted this government in because we wanted no austerity. We wanted to end the debt bailout, and we want economic growth here. We want jobs. We want to make a living. We want to live. And we can see right now they might have taken this 4-month period, I'm talking about the new government, to detach themselves from the Eurozone. And we see they printed up drachmas. They're getting ready to produce them. They're backing everything up with gold. And they might get maybe a bridge loan or so from the BRICS, from Russia. And we can see right now, Tsipras is out there saying that Greece won't be seeking a third international bailout after the 4-month extension. He's saying that some have bet on a third bailout, on the possibility of a third bailout in June. He said, I'm very sorry, but once again, we will disappoint them once again. The Prime Minister declared the Greek people put an end to bailouts with their vote. The bailouts were not only socially destructive, but also economically inefficient. And that is completely something I can get behind, because bailouts do not help whatsoever. Basically, what happens when they continually give bailouts to countries, it puts them further and further into debt. People lose jobs. The economy suffers. And Greece is the model of that. And we can see it is happening throughout the Eurozone and here in the United States. Here in the United States, they're able to cover it up because they're creating money, so they can continually create money. In Greece, they have to borrow it from the Eurozone, the IMF, to get by each and every single time they run out of money. And of course, there are certain restrictions on them getting the money where they have to impose austerity on the people. Here in the United States, they just keep creating. The debt keeps getting bigger and bigger. But what happens is the revenue cannot keep up with the interest payments on this debt. It cannot be sustained. And this is why they're keeping all interest rates suppressed. It's not because they're trying to help every single person in each one of these countries. They understand what is happening, and they realize that they need to push their agenda forward and start a war before this entire collapse happens. Now we see the Senate, they passed a stopgap spending bill. It's 1 week, and we're going to continually hear warnings come out of DHS, TSA, letting us know the terrorists are here because they only got 1 week. I wouldn't be surprised within this 1 week if we saw some type of false flag to convince Congress that, yes, fully fund us. Because like I said, if they were fully funded, this entire threat would just kind of disappear from the news, the corporate media. But since they're only funded for 1 week, I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to push it a little bit further and stage a false flag to convince Congress that, yes, there are terrorists, we warned you about it, and they struck a mall. We have to remember, they've been training for a mall attack. And again, if they're going to continually tell us that there's terrorism out there and we need to be worried, Americans should have the right to protect themselves with bulletproof vests, with weapons. Why would you make a mall a gun-free zone? If they're terrorists are coming and they're going to take people hostage and kill people with weapons, it makes no sense. But again, we know this is an inside job. We understand what they're trying to do here. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if we did see something. Unless the week goes by and they hear from Congress that yes, it's going the way they want and they will get funded, and then we'll just see it completely die down. Now, we talked about encryption, privacy quite a bit. And of course, people are out there saying, well, I'm doing nothing wrong and there's no reason to have my privacy. I have nothing to hide. Well, I say once again, if you have nothing to hide and you meet someone, give them your bank account number because you have nothing to hide. You could trust. Actually, tell your friend. Give them your bank account number. Tell them everything about your life, all your secrets, how you have sex in the bedroom, because, again, you have nothing to hide, because you're allowing the government to do this. You're taking away the choice of your privacy and handing it over to the government and saying, yeah, I have nothing to hide, so you can look at everything. Well, if you feel that way, then guess what? Then you have no problem telling every single person about your bank accounts, about what you do, and everything else that you don't want other people to know. So, in reality, you do want privacy because you wouldn't go out and tell someone every single thing. So that argument that people make is kind of ridiculous. But we understand the government doesn't want people to have encryption. And we have proof of this. Kim.com started a site called Mega. And right now, PayPal will no longer process customer payments for the cloud storage service Mega. And they were pressured by the government, by U.S. Motion Picture Association, to drop Mega from PayPal. Mega said it adequately proved to PayPal that it was legitimate service, urging PayPal to share the evidence with Visa and MasterCard. Eventually, PayPal made a non-negotiable decision to immediately terminate services to Mega. PayPal has apologized for this situation and confirmed that Mega management are upstanding and acting in good faith. PayPal acknowledged that the business is legitimate, but advised that a key concern was the encryption. And you have to remember, the government only wants you to use the encryption that they know the method, where they can figure out the key and break in and see what you're doing. Kim.com created an encryption system where the government doesn't know the method. And because they don't know the method, they can't figure out the key. And it makes it very hard to see what they're dealing with. Again, people say, well, what's the big deal? Why do you put things in a safe in your house? Why do you lock your house? Because you want it protected from the government and criminals. Same thing with encryption. Just because the information is electronic, it's still your information that you want to keep private. There is no reason for the government to come in and take a look at it. Because if this was the case, then just let the government come into your house every week, let them take a look around, let them open your safe if you don't have a problem with this. Because that's what you're allowing them to do with electronic data. And you can see the government is pushing anyone that doesn't want to abide by their rules. If you try to use encryption, they will force a way where you can't do business. And we could see with Mega, that is the proof. Now, out in Ukraine, we see Ukrainian forces only withdrew about 15% of heavy weaponry. The eastern Ukrainians, the southeastern people, have withdrew about 80% of their hardware in Lugansk. And actually, in Kiev, we have noticed that they're removing their heavy arms without the oversight of the OSCE. And this raises some red flags and wondering what Kiev is actually doing. Because as we know, they are definitely getting ready for a major offensive. They tried this last time. It didn't go well whatsoever. Putin stepped in and, again, put forth a peace plan. Even Angela Merkel and Hollande from France stepped in and said, listen, we see what's going on here. If this goes any further, we will have World War III right on our front lawns, and we can't have this once again. And we know that the United States provides Kiev with satellite intelligence. We know that they're giving them satellite imagery. And there's a story out there saying that, yes, U.S. does supply Kiev with spy satellite imagery of where the enemies are positioned. And we knew that they had it right over where everything was going on. And if Russia was actually bringing in tanks, troops, believe me, the satellites would have zoomed right in color, in 3D, and it would have shown that Russia was in there. But this is what they're trying to explain away, why they give these black and white blurry pictures that you can't make out at all because they're afraid that Russia will figure out how good the satellites are. Well, let me just ask you this. These images that they're giving us are worse than Google images, satellite images. I mean, I can go onto Google Earth and zoom in and get better images than the U.S. satellites. I mean, what does this tell us? They're doing this on purpose because they don't have the evidence. They could have just matched the Google Earth pictures and say, okay, we have the same technology as Google. And here it is in color 3D. We can zoom in really close. We can even get street level. But they don't want to do that. All they want you to see is that we have a Photoshop picture. It's black and white. It's blurry. Just believe us. But it hasn't been working. Cyber Bakut was out there, and they have obtained documents proving that the U.S. plans to supply lethal weapons to Ukraine through private military companies. Well, we see the dealings going on with United Arab Emirates. Even though they're denying that this is happening, yes, it's going through back channels, through the black market, and it's coming into Ukraine. According to Cyber Bakut, the supply of weapons will be entrusted to experienced professionals from private U.S. military companies who will arrive in southeastern Ukraine to take part in the war. And we already know more and more paid mercenaries are coming in. Countries are bringing in other advisors into the area. They are building up forces to mount a major offensive. And this time it's going to be very different because it will not be the Ukrainian army. It will be outside forces intermixed into the Ukrainian army like we've never seen before. Now, the Pentagon is backing away from the spring attack in Iraq. They're saying, it might happen in the fall. And John Kirby was out there saying, I don't think we are there yet. There are gaps and seams that need to be closed. I don't think they have the authorization for war. They're not ready to go. They thought they were probably going to have it already, and they don't. They need to bring in a lot more U.S. troops and other coalition forces. More weapons are needed because they're not just planning to go into Mosul. They're planning to go into Yemen, Lebanon, Libya, Yemen, unless I said Yemen twice now, Syria, and that is their main objective, and then eventually Iran. This is their major plan. Now we see another false flag has occurred in Russia. The murder of Boris Nemtsov. He was a Russian dissident, highly critical of President Putin, and he was shot and killed on the street near the Red Square. They drove up and they just shot him. As if on cue, the murder yesterday of Boris Nemtsov, a Washington-funded Russian opposition politician with a tiny following, has become a major news item for the American press. And we know whenever the press gets on it and continually harps on it, it's almost like when the MH17 was shot down. All you heard was Russia did it, Russia did it, Russia did it, Russia did it. And then it died down because they never had proof. Here we see it once again. Yes, Putin must have done it. Putin must have done it because Boris Nemtsov was against Putin. Well, it wouldn't help Putin in doing this. Actually, what was the motive? At this point, there is no motive. And we can see that the press have responded as if orchestrated by a conductor with the insinuations of Putin's responsibility and the death of democracy in Russia. Stephen Lenman, who watches these matters closely, notes that clearly Nemtsov is worth more to Washington dead than alive. He was shot dead with 4 shots from a handgun from a car passing by him. He got State Department funding through National Endowment for Democracy. It wages war on democracy worldwide. It advances U.S. interests. Its board of directors includes a rogue gallery of neocon extremists. In 2009, Nemtsov and Kasparov met personally with Obama. They discussed anti-Putin tactics. Regime change by any other name. Nemtsov's killing was strategically timed ahead of Sunday's Vesna Russian Spring anti-government opposition march. The Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said Putin has stressed that his brutal murder has all the signs of a contract murder and is extremely provocative. Clearly, Putin had nothing to gain. Rogue U.S. elements have lots to benefit from trying to destabilize Russia right now. And we can see right now, it makes no sense for Putin to do this. What possibly did Nemtsov have? Of course, they're saying, oh, he had evidence about Ukraine and what was going on. There was no evidence, because if there was real proof out there, it would have been shown already. This is all propaganda to convince us. This has all the earmarks of a CIA staged false flag. And they're trying to push a regime change in Russia. We've been talking about this. They're trying it in Russia, China, Venezuela, Argentina. They're pushing this as hard as they possibly can. And we can see, despite challenging economic conditions, Putin's approval rating exceeds 85%. Nemtsov's party has less than 5%. He was no popular favorite. Most Russians disliked him. And Russians, they're not stupid. They know how Washington operates. Obama, the central bankers, they want war. And they need to destabilize Russia. And this is the first part of how they're trying to do this. They're trying to rally protests in Russia about this situation. And we have to think back. Remember when they paid for the coup d'etat in Ukraine that was worth about $5 billion that they put into it? And they tried to convince everyone the snipers were from Yanukovych who were firing on the people. Actually, then it turns out that no, it was the people who were rioting. All the paid mercenaries, everything that was planned, the snipers were actually those people rioting, firing on their own people. Actually, it was the paid mercenaries firing on the other people that joined in to make it look like the government was doing this. This is what they do. Now, there's going to be a march for his funeral, and Moscow said absolutely. They sanctioned a march. They're allowing everyone to come out and join in on this. And I think there's about 700 people that showed up to this, and they laid flowers and leaflets. And again, all of this has been created. And the press here in the United States and throughout Europe, they're trying to convince everyone that, yes, we need a regime change in Russia. It is time. Democracy's breaking down. And this is a complete false flag to convince everyone that Putin did this. And this is their first stage into pushing a regime change in this country. Because what happened was Putin put together a peace plan back in August of 2013 in Syria. So, +1 for Putin, -1 for Obama. We see the same thing that happened in Ukraine. Putin stepped forth with a peace plan. The Nobel Peace Prize winner for peace didn't put forth a peace plan whatsoever. So again, +2 for Putin, -2 for Obama. And this was not working. So they need a way to discredit Putin, to create a reason why there needs to be regime change. And this is the first step. We will see many after this. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.